There is absolutely no reason for anything important to be here. No city, no palace, no cathedral, just a small church hidden deep in a rural Scottish valley. And yet, beneath this floor are sealed lead coffins, a dynastic burial vault, and the remains of dukes and duchesses who once stood at the centre of power. This shouldn't exist, but it does.
Welcome to Bonnet and Blade. It's Grant. Just in case you'd forgotten, it's been a while. And Jess, the cameraman, editor, and basically chief cook and bottle wash. She keeps me right. Here today we're in Durisdeer, a little village in Dumfries and Galloway. This little village is really quite a special little village, and we'll explain why. I bet you didn't know we had a mini Vatican City in Scotland. If you drove past this church, you probably wouldn't stop. Durisdeer sits quietly at the bottom of a narrow valley, surrounded by rolling hills, fields and farmland. The road is a minor road, the village is small, and the church blends into the landscape. At first glance, Durisdeer Church looks like hundreds of other churches across rural Scotland. Modest in its function, almost anonymous. And that is exactly why what lies inside is so surprising and so historically valuable.
A church has stood on this site for centuries. The earliest written reference dates to the 13th century. At that time, the rector of Durisdeer granted fishing rights on the River Tweed to monks from Kelso Abbey. This was a quiet, rural parish, never a centre of pilgrimage, never a religious powerhouse. For hundreds of years, Durisdeer Church fell under the authority of the Bishop of Glasgow. Life here changed slowly, unpredictably, almost imperceptibly, until Scotland itself changed.
The Douglas family was one of the most influential dynasties in Scottish history. Their reach extended across politics, law, land, and the monarchy. They weren't just nobles, they were power brokers. And like many elite families of Europe, they thought carefully about how power would be remembered. Not just in titles, not just in documents, but in stone.
By the late 17th century, the Douglases had made the bold decision. They would build a private mausoleum, but it would be directly onto the church. Not nearby, not in a cemetery, but physically integrated into the sacred space. Between 1695 and 1708, construction took place on what we now call the Queensberry Aisle. This was their statement. James Smith of Whitehill was chosen to design Queensberry Aisle and the mausoleum at Durisdeer Parish Church, a commission from powerful Dukes of Queensberry that placed him among Scotland's most trusted architects of the late 17th century. Born around 1645 in Rothshire, the son of a mason, Smith rose from practical beginnings to become one of the most influential architects in Scotland. He travelled to Rome and to continental Europe, where he absorbed the principles of Renaissance classicism, ideas that were still relatively new north of the border. On his return, he became one of the first architects to introduce conscientiously classical and later Palladian style to Scotland. His buildings emphasise symmetry, proportion and restrained ornament, drawing inspiration from the ideals of Andrea Palladio. Among his most recognisable works is the circular mausoleum of Sir George Mackenzie of Rosehoch in Edinburgh's Greyfriars Kirkyard. Modelled on Renaissance temple forms, it is one of the earliest classical dome structures in the city. Today, many people know it not for its architecture, but for the later legend of Mackenzie's poltergeist, which has made the site famous in Edinburgh's ghost lore. Beyond funerary monuments, Smith worked on major aristocrats' residences. At Drumlanrig Castle, he contributed to one of Scotland's grandest ducal homes. He was also involved in the development of Dalkeith Palace, and he designed the Canongate Kirk in Edinburgh, a striking example of balanced classical proportions. When people describe this place as Scotland's mini Vatican, they're not talking about religion, they're talking about architecture. At the very heart of the Queensberry's mausoleum stands a stone canopy, a baldaquino, supported by 4 columns, positioned directly above the vault below. Above it, there's an elaborate Baroque marble memorial dedicated to James Douglas, the 2nd Duke of Queensberry, and his wife Mary. That detail matters, because the most famous baldaquino in Europe stands thousands of miles away in St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. Designed by Gino Lanzareno Barini in the 17th century, the great bronze canopy of St. Peter's marks the high altar and the tomb of St. Peter himself. It is architecture used to signal supreme importance, a visual statement that says what lies beneath this point matters.
The Queensberry baldaquino is far smaller and made of stone, not bronze, and built for a rural parish church, but the idea is the same. A canopy placed deliberately to draw the eye downwards towards a burial, towards legacy, towards permanence. In Rome, it marks the resting place of a saint, a very important saint, St. Peter. And in Durisdeer, it marks the resting place of 2 very important people, the Duke and Duchess. That is where the comparison comes from. Not imitation, but intention. This is a powerful family using the same architectural language as Europe's greatest religious centre. These pillars are amazing. The spiral, anti-spiral climbing up is just like the baldaquino in Rome. St. Peter's column is using the same spiral effect, just as Solomon's spirals go up. This too is like Solomon's spirals going up, which makes them so special, and it makes it very like the baldaquino in the Vatican. Who was James Douglas? A great question. He was the 2nd Duke of Queensberry, born in 1662. He was educated at a very good university, not that I'm biased or anything, Glasgow University, and he rose quickly through political life. By the 1700s, he was one of the most powerful men in Scotland. In 1707, he played a central role in the union of Scottish and English parliaments, a moment that permanently reshaped British history. Supporters saw pragmatism, critics saw a betrayal. History remembers him as the Union Duke.
If you look at the intense carving that goes on in these statues, it's almost like every stitch can be seen in every item of clothing. Every cord looks like you could take it off and retie it. The jewels look amazing. This is a true love story. The Duke very much loved his Duchess, and I think that can be demonstrated with the cherubs above them holding the scroll of Latin. It can be seen in all of the extra adornments to this beautiful crypt, in which they have decided that the Queensberry crypt is so worthwhile, and they never wanted to be parted even in death. So they've put themselves together and they're buried in this amazing tomb, as are 12 others. There's 12 members of family in this crypt, and family and close friends are being buried here, and it makes it a very, very special place. Just look at the ornateness of the carving. You can tell that he has been to Italy. He has been to the Vatican City. There's no way that someone could have this inspiration and this amount of beautiful detail if they hadn't seen it for themselves and been awestruck and inspired. So it is a very important crypt, and this is Scotland's little Vatican City. Nowhere else in Scotland is there a baldacchino like this, with this amount of ornateness and love story put behind it. And I think it's very special to be found in a little parish church in Durisdeer in Scotland. If you've ever been to Durisdeer, you could drive past it. It's not an awe-inspiring church or cathedral that we're standing in. It's a tiny little parish church, and this is out the back through a wooden door, and you wouldn't know it's here unless there was something special to bring you here. I do hope you come to visit. It's well worth it. To Mary, Duchess of Queensberry and Dover, who being sprung on the father's side from the very illustrious families of Burlington and Cumberland, on the mother's from those of Somerset and Essex, tempered the splendour of her lineage by a winning disposition, heightened it by greatness of spirit, and rendered by the seductive allurement of her wit and beauty, her stern virtue pleasing and acceptable to her most loving husband, while he was engaged in the ever-changing affairs of state, in prosperity and honour, in straits a very pleasant help, in adversity a comfort, in care and counsel of domestic life a most faithful partner, to his matchless wife James, Duke of Queensberry and Dover, has caused this monument to be erected with the hope and only solace that under the same tomb where he has placed these beloved ashes, he will place his own, died at London 2nd of October 1709. In the same tomb with the ashes of his most dear wife, James, Duke of Queensberry and Dover, has desired his own to be mingled a man who, having arrived to such and so great a pinnacle of honour and high employment as no subject before he reached, yielded to fate at London, 6th of July, in the year of Christ, our Redeemer, 1711.
In 1711, James Douglas was buried here. Over time, the direct Douglas line ended. In 1810, the Queensberry title passed through marriage to the Buccleuch family. The mausoleum remained.
Today, Durisdeer Church looks ordinary, but beneath the floor, nothing has changed. Lead coffins, stone walls, dynastic ambition, hidden in a valley, in a village most people pass through without stopping. But it's Scotland's mini Vatican, still waiting in silence.